Hello YouTubers, I'm here today to talk about computers, about putting them together, building your own PC. And the question you may have is, why would you even want to build one when you can go to Best Buy or HP or Dell, buy one online, and it's all configured, it comes with various configurations, it's warranted, all put together with the OS installed, good to go, and for you to use as soon as it gets delivered. But sometimes the issue with them is that you may not get what you want, or even if it's past warranty, something breaks. Let's say you buy one from Dell or wherever and the power supply breaks, which is this, and you need to replace it. Shipping it back to Dell will probably cost you an arm and a leg. So this is something like a power supply is probably very easy to change. Or let's say your hard drive breaks, or you want a new hard drive, or you want to expand the drive capacity. Let's say you buy a computer with 1 terabyte, you want to add another terabyte of storage, so you want to upgrade it, or you want a faster processor. Intel, AMD are always coming out with new processors, so you may want to do an upgrade of those while you're at it. So getting an idea as to how these things are put together in the first place will make it easier for you. And also, even if you're buying a PC, knowing that what things are in it will probably give you the configuration that you want, or help you think of something that you didn't thought about earlier. So let's talk about the different components that make up a PC when you go about it. Maybe you don't know what to look for in a PC when you do decide to buy one, whether it's a website like Dell or HP or any of those companies. So let's talk about what's inside it, and let's talk about why some things are better than others, and sometimes it's just there are different things out there, and one thing for sure is that technology is constantly changing. Things are getting faster. Things are getting consuming lower power. They dissipate, less heat, and there are newer standards that make different things work together a lot faster, so a lot better. And so in a case like that, you want to learn about the different things that are out there and how the technology is changing to help you buy a PC that you'll be happy with for 3 to 5 years of having it. Okay, so we'll start out with the basics, and then we'll work our way to the harder stuff. So obviously the most obvious thing here is the case, which is this thing, which is an empty case when I open it up. So this is the outer board, the outer cover, and inside it is pretty much empty. There's nothing in here, so everything fits in here for you to put together. The connections are on the back, and in the front you generally have a slot for your DVD drive or Blu-ray drive, or other kind of drive. So this is in a nutshell. They range anywhere from $20 to $200 depending on how well they're made. Some have sharp edges, so you have to be extremely careful. And some have toolless design. Some allow slots for SSD. Some comes with multiple fans. Some allow cooling, water cooling. So it really depends on how much money you want to spend on it, and you pick the case that you want based on that, and then also the look and feel. Maybe you want a white one, aluminum, stainless steel, just like your refrigerator. So the sky's the limit on the type of case that you want. Okay, the next most simple thing would be the power supply. Well, it's simple, yes and no. It's simple in the sense that it's just one component. And again, these also range from $20 to $200 depending on, what you're buying. So if you look at this one, it is 500 watts. And again, different manufacturers make it. I'm not particular to any one kind of manufacturer. I'm not endorsing any manufacturer. As you can see, I have different manufacturers here. This is a RaidMax power supply. In here is some other make, Asus motherboard, MSI motherboard. So I'll have all different makes. And generally price tends to drive which one you buy. So anyway, this is a RaidMax power supply. It's rated 500 watts. The only thing I would recommend on the power supply is the ones that says bronze 80. It's some kind of efficiency, and again, these are getting greener as as time goes. They're getting much more efficient. If you have a computer that's on all the time, you definitely want one that comes with a very good warranty, because these are probably the things that tend to break first. It's electrical. It has a lot of parts here like a capacitors and inductors and whatnot. So these tend to break over time. So I spoke about the power supply. Again, the more efficient one, one with the good warranty is the one you want to get. Okay, so we went to the case, power supply. Let's talk about some of the stuff inside, which would be the DVD drive. So some computers come with it, some computers don't come with it. It really depends on what you're going to be using it for, but obviously it's a must-have. Again, these have evolved over time. This is a SATA, which uses a cable like this, as opposed to one of the older ones, which is an IDE interface, which uses a cable like this. So we've evolved from using a cable like this to a cable like this, and these are a lot faster. They take up less room inside, and I'll talk about why it's important that they take up less space on the inside. Again, different manufacturers make this. This is Asus. You can get them from Sony, HP, whoever. It's just any DVD drive that you've had in the past. Let's move on to the next one, which is a hard drive. And a hard drive is actually where you keep all your files and things like that. Again, these also have evolved a long time ago. They also used to use the same IDE cables to connect. Now they use SATA. And these are getting faster, and these are also getting more greener in terms of they use less power and they dissipate less heat. These have also evolved from a SATA hard drive from here to an SSD hard drive, which is one I don't have. But the SSD hard drive has no moving parts. This has a magnetic plate inside which turns at a high speed, like 10,000 RPM, and it has moving heads that sit and write on it. Very similar to a record player, but uses magnetic information and writes information magnetically, and runs faster compared to a record player. But these have evolved into SSD, where there are no moving parts. They don't use up a lot of power, and they generate less heat, and they actually last longer than this. And they're small enough that you can fit them in your shirt pocket. Again, the interface is what is key, because this is the newer type of interface that is a lot faster in terms of how much data it can move, and it's smaller compared to a big thing like that. So imagine inside your computer you have one cable like this for your hard drive, and for your DVD drive here you don't have that. Now you have these that take up less space. And I'll talk about why space is important inside a motherboard. So let's move on to, before I get to the motherboard, which is this one, let's move on to processor, because the processor really depends on what kind of a motherboard you select, or not necessarily the make of the motherboard, but the type of the motherboard, which is, the nomenclature it's listed here, whether it supports Intel or AMD, and the socket type. So we'll get to that in a minute. So let's talk about processors. So here I have an Intel. I said don't touch the table. Okay, sit back, don't touch the table. So this is an Intel processor, which is right here, coming out of the box. Oops, don't do that. And don't touch it if you do that. Only touch the edges, don't touch any of the metal contacts. Now I don't know how to put it back. Anyway, so this is the processor, the brains of the CPU, blah, blah, blah. So even if you got a computer and it comes with an Intel processor, maybe it's an iCore 3, this is an iCore 5, which is a newer one. If you want to do an upgrade, Intel has videos on how to do an upgrade, but you want to make sure that the processor that you get is compatible with the motherboard that you have inside. And basically what's happened is that both Intel and AMD come out with newer processors every year. So they change how they connect to a motherboard by a socket. And I'll talk to you what a socket is in 1 second. So a socket is, if I were to open up the motherboard, actually I'm going to get rid of this box. Open up the motherboard. You will see this is where the CPU goes right in. You open this up, flip this open, and the CPU fits right in here, and then you close it. So you have to have a motherboard that's compatible with it has to have an appropriate socket for the CPU that you're getting so that it can fit. So even though you may have an iCore 3 in your motherboard, but if it's an older type of a socket and then you get an iCore 5 with a newer type of a socket, it's not going to fit. And so let's talk about sockets, which probably makes, probably makes sense to talk about sockets. So sockets are basically the interface between the CPU and the motherboard, and over time they've improved the socket. They've improved the CPU so that it's much more efficient and faster, so the socket also has to change. If you look at this one, this is an LGA 1150 socket. The older motherboards are 1155, 1156, going back to LGA 775. So they've come from 11GA 775 to 1156, 1155 to now this is 1150. Now there's a newer one. I think there's an LGA 2011, and then there's a new one that just came out. So different sockets, which means different motherboards, right? So you want to make sure that you get a motherboard with a socket that matches the socket of the CPU. Or if you buy the motherboard already, you want to make sure that when you buy the CPU that it matches that socket. So let's go back to our example. Let's say you have a computer from Dell and it came with an iCore 3, and let's say it's an Ivy Bridge, which is an LGA 1156, which was what it was called, also nicknamed Ivy Bridge. Now you want to go to an Intel iCore 5, but the newer processor is called Haswell. But the Haswell is 1150. So this is a Haswell, it's an LGA 1150. So the new CPU, even though it's an Intel and your old one was also an Intel, it's not going to fit into the motherboard because the older one was 1156 and the newer one is a socket 1150. So you would have to get a new motherboard. So you need to be aware of that. So if you know that you have a socket that's 1156, you want to buy an iCore 5 that's also 1156, which is Ivy Bridge processor, right? The sad part is an older processor tends to cost more than a newer processor, only because of the availability or whatnot. So it's kind of catch-22. Manufacturers would want to get rid of their older motherboard because no one's going to be using it. So you may be able to pick one up for cheap, but when you go to get the processor, you may not be able to for whatever reason. I don't know. So just something to be aware of that. You want to match the LGA bus, the socket with between the motherboard and the CPU. Okay. I mentioned about space and things like that inside the processor. So let's, inside the case, space inside the case. So let's talk about that for a second. So inside the case, as I said, the two bad things that can ruin your computer is heat and dust. Dust will tend to build an electrical charge and will cause a short circuit over time. So you want to get rid of dust and you want to get rid of the heat, because the heat will also allow electricity to get conducted where it shouldn't, and then cause things to burn out. So a thicker cable like this will reduce the heat flow if you got multiple of these cables. But as opposed to if you go to something like this, very thinner, doesn't take up a lot of room, so you get more airflow. Obviously fans help, like the fan that I have here, right? This fan helps by moving a lot of, well, I don't know how efficient it is, but I think it helps. Anyway, that's that. And here's a fan that the CPU came with, right? This is the fan that the CPU basically sits right on top. And if you notice, it has what's called heat conducting thermal fluid or paste attached to it already, so you just stick it on top. If you're changing around, you probably would have to get the paste. It's like $5-6 to put it on there, and definitely you need to put one of these heat sink, which is this, and a fan on top of it. Some people have gone the extra mile and said, hey, I'm not going to use the fan that comes with the processor, I want to get my own, and then managed to get a bigger fan like this one. That, and I don't know, I hope it really fits into my PC, which is this, but anyway, let's you know, that's something to think about when you're buying a PC. Is to make sure you can cool it. I hit that aside. Okay, so we spoke about cooling. Let's talk about the motherboard, which is probably the mother of all complications, I would say. You know, there's so many manufacturers, so many different types of motherboard. It really comes down to what you're looking for. For example, this one has a maximum of 32 gigabytes of memory I can install on here. Some will have more. Some will go 16 times 4, so 64 gigabytes of memory. So if you're having a computer, if you need a computer that requires more memory, you may get a better one. The other thing I want to let you know is that this begins with the Z87. The Z means its overclocking ability. So if you look at my CPU box, this is a 4690K. The K stands for its ability to overclock. So not only should your CPU be able to be overclocked, you need a motherboard that is capable of overclocking it. And MSI actually on its box has very good tools. I can't find the box. Anyway, MSI has tools on how to overclock and does a very good job. And one of the reasons why I got a better fan than using the stock fan is because overclocking would generate a lot of heat. And therefore you need a better fan. The one thing I haven't spoken about is memory, and I'll do that in a minute. But anyway, this is a newer motherboard. As you can see, it has no interface for one of these older IDE cables, right? It has plenty of these. I'm sorry, I should have showed this one. It has plenty of these slots for these SATA cables over here. 6 of these, and this is SATA 3. There's SATA 2, which is the older. SATA 3 is faster, just like USB 3.0 is faster. Like I said, you know, every year something that's faster, greener, more powerful. You can put 2 video cards in here. There's room here for, you know, for their fans, and you could use. There are 2 kinds of video cards. Well, 2 chip manufacturers of video cards, and their proprietary mechanism for connecting them together. One is SLI, the other one is Crossfire. Just like there are 2 manufacturers of CPUs, AMD and Intel, and I've gone with Intel, but what's in here is actually an AMD CPU. Basically, you know, all these different features define the motherboard. You have HDMI, you know, if you want one with an optical output to connect to your stereo, HDMI out to your TV, you know, DTS audio, you know, they have an older type of a PS2 for a gaming mechanical keyboard, which, you know, supposedly people say when you're gaming you need the older kind so that your response is faster. You know, whatever. I'm not a hardcore gamer, even though I bought a gaming motherboard. Like I said, price defines what it, you know, which one I should get. And different manufacturers, just note that if you're buying if you plan on overclocking, make sure it's got a Z in front. And there's Z87, Z77, Z97. It really depends on how much money you feel like spending and you know, what all the features you want. Probably the next one where you may, depending on you know, what you'll be using the PC for, are the video cards. I don't have very elaborate video cards. I don't find a need to, but some people spend. For example, their CPU and motherboard may cost $500, and they may spend $500 just on the video card. And what the video card allows you to do, that if you're a hardcore gamer, or if you have a lot of floating point calculations to do, you would use the processor of the video game card to do things faster. So a video card, you know, one of the high-end video cards made by whatever, ATI or NVIDIA, that costs, you know, $200, $300, will allow you to play a game at 1080p with, you know, 60 frames per second or even faster than that. So you get a smooth experience. But even that is changing. The reason why I didn't talk about video cards is because right now we're at a pivotal point where you have a new set of TVs that are coming out, which are 4K TVs. And if you want a 4K TV and you want to have the ability to get smooth playing, they need to be HDMI 2.0 compatible so that they can run at a faster rate. A lot of the video cards out there don't do that, but then again, people aren't too concerned about it. They just want, they're happy with 30 frames a second. So again, it's one, if you did, before you go ahead and spend the money on a video card, you need to do a research in terms of what is it that you want, and what kind of TV you're going to be connecting it to, how you're going to be connecting it. Do you have 2 monitors, 3 monitors? You're going to be multitasking, watching TV on one, video gaming on one. Do you have widescreen monitors? You have to put some thought into it before you just go and rush it and buy it. Because you could buy a high-end video card, spend a lot of money on it, and maybe not even using it to the fullest of its capabilities. So if you should do the research on the CPU, what type of CPU is good and how you're going to be using it, and what type of motherboard to get that mates with the CPU. And do you want an SSD hard drive instead of an old magnetic hard drive, and the SSD is a little bit more pricey, but it's faster and they don't fail. If you're going to be overclocking, do you need a CPU? Do you need a fan? Do you need a Blu-ray writer? If you're going to be writing Blu-rays and you have blank Blu-rays, you may get a Blu-ray writer. This video card here that comes with it does 1080p at 60 frames a second, so I can play pretty good games, I think, at least most games at a very good resolution. If not, I'll stick a video card in it. But let's move towards what's inside a CPU, a computer. And this one's heavy. We'll go from there. Just talk about what's in it. Opening that up, here's everything. Oh, I didn't talk about the memory. Just give me a second. Okay, so let's talk about the inside. And one thing that I did not mention earlier is the memory. So here's memory from G.Skill. I'm actually returning this one, but basically this is a 4 gig of memory and it fits into the motherboard. So the different kind, it's the memory allows the CPU to store things, operate faster, and work through it. So let's talk about the different components here. I have the power supply, and this is an OCZ 700 watts, right? It's mounted on top. People prefer top mounted. So people prefer getting a case with the top mounted power supply so the heat from here goes up and out, and anything that's in here gets dragged and heat goes up. So people prefer a top mounted one as opposed to some have it here. If you put it horizontally, it really doesn't matter, but in a tower like this, it's better to get one where the power supply is top mounted. So this motherboard that's back here, it's all secured into, it's set up on these offset screws, but it's screwed into the back of the case. As you can see, I have an AMD fan, so it's an AMD CPU underneath, and with the heat sink, so to take the heat out. And I have 2 hard drives that are located here. I have a DVD drive that's up front, which is also a writer, a DVD drive like anything else. And I have 2 memory cards here that fit in the into the memory slots. This is unfortunately, this motherboard only allows 2 slots for memory compared to the MSI one that I had over here. So this MSI has 4 slots, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I can stick more memory in this one compared to this one, which only has 2 slots, and that's why you see 2, well, this red memory card and this blue memory card. Again, nothing fancy about the memory card. They also have heat sinks on top of them to get rid of the heat. They're like flashy and whatnot. Here's my SATA cable for one of the hard drives. Here's my SATA cable for the other hard drives. And I do have an ID drive. If you look at this black one, I do have an IDE cable, the older kind, because my drive is an older kind of an IDE drive. So, you know, it's an older style. The other thing I have is a memory card, is a video card, which is here, because the onboard graphics of this motherboard aren't all that great, but it's a video card. Actually, it's this one, it's a video card. I have a TV tuner card for a bunch of other stuff. I have a USB FireWire card for my old legacy iPod, and that's about it. So, you know, I can add things here. If I want a better video card, I can add it here. If I wanted to improve my my processor, I can get a newer processor and add it. I can add additional hard drives here. I can install, you know, a better power supply, you know. So this way, if you know how things fit together, you can make those changes accordingly to build a better PC and not necessarily throw the one that you have, you know, away. Or if something breaks, you can replace. For example, this is an AMD Phenom 2 kind of a processor. And now there's a newer kind of processor, forgot, AMD 8 something, and I have to upgrade my motherboard to use the new one because it's an AM3. And I hope it's been informational. If you have any questions, you know, post them down below. But definitely you should do some research before buying a PC. You're spending a lot of money. You may, you know, want to get one that's future-proof so that you can expand it as time goes and gives you what you want over the years. You know, which one, whether you want an AMD or an Intel, whether you want an AMD or an Intel, it's really up to you. What kind of video card you want, it's up to you, but at least know when you're buying them which ones fit together. Thank you.